Excellent. Thanks for turning on the recording, Martin. And David, I'll turn it over to you at this point. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Doug. It's so good to see so many people I know and good friends in Natick joining me this morning. In case you missed it during the introductory greetings period, I'm giving this presentation from my brother's house on the Cape because I had significant Achilles tendon surgery on Friday. So we'll see how I do on this, and I'm happy to come back another time if I run out of steam, quite frankly. But I'm looking forward to a full recovery, and I'm able to, you know, one benefit of the pandemic, I will say, not that there are a whole lot of benefits, is we've learned that we don't have to be in person to get a lot of stuff done. So I actually timed this surgery that I'd been putting off for quite a while, knowing that I could do most if not all of my State House duties via Zoom and telephone and email. So that's why I decided to try to keep this appointment this morning. Obviously our lives have changed in a lot of ways, and I'm happy to do this. When I got this invitation, Ricky and Doug, when they contacted me, they wanted me to talk about some gun violence prevention issues that I'm working on. That's an issue that I've worked on now for literally 40 years. When I was a freshman at Colby College, and I started studying the issue in a government seminar, and have really made it a good portion of my life's work. And today's date, February 14th, in addition to being Valentine's Day, is also the 4th anniversary of the horrible Parkland High School shootings in Florida 4 years ago. And that was an incident. I mean, look, you know, we've seen horrible incidents around the country, way too many of them for way too long. But that was an incident that, because it happened in a high school, and because of the particular facts of that incident, started a movement among young people in the United States of America to actually start becoming involved in, first, in gun violence prevention policy and issues, but then also secondly in political activism. And that, you know, that really is an outgrowth of what happened at Parkland 4 years ago. But let me tell you, sort of give you the landscape now, because it's really, there's some interesting things going on. I've obviously been involved in trying to make Massachusetts the safest state in the country from a gun violence perspective. And we've been basically pretty successful at that. I've really had a hand in, or actually putting pen to paper in writing most of Massachusetts gun laws. And because of the gun laws that we have in Massachusetts, we are generally rated either the first or second safest state in the country. Hawaii will usually beat us out, but Hawaii is a little unique because it's hard to get a gun in and out of Hawaii, obviously, because of, you know, its status as an island. Like I said, we've done a good job of that here. And our laws tend to be much stronger than other states' laws. As a result of that, I've had the good fortune to be able to take my show on the road a little bit. And I'm involved with a number of different national organizations in the gun violence prevention sphere. And we basically have a couple of different goals. The first goal is in states where the gun violence prevention politics, I'll say, aren't that good. Our first goal is to try to stop bad laws from becoming worse, quite frankly. You know, there's been a big push towards a couple of issues, open carry laws and reciprocal laws, and then removing any permitting or training requirements in some more rural states and some southern and western states. We've put a stop to that pretty much over the last couple of years, which is a good thing. The second part of what I'll call my roadshow is trying to take the Massachusetts model, which is a permitting system that we have here in Massachusetts, and trying to get similar permitting systems enacted in other states. About half of the states have some sort of a permitting system right now, of various degrees. And then the other part of what I'm involved in nationally is there's really two things going on here. And this is all kind of in the weeds, but I'll try to explain them as the best as I can. On a federal level, and I'm still a believer that in an ideal world, we would have a good, strong set of federal laws rather than doing this on a state-by-state piecemeal basis. Unfortunately, because of the makeup of the US Senate right now, President Biden has not been able to move on one of his major campaign promises, which is to reenact a national assault weapons ban and to do some other legislative acts because he quite frankly, you need 60 votes in the US Senate, as you guys probably know, to do anything, and they just votes aren't there. And I think wisely has tried to put his political and legislative capital into a couple of different areas ahead, again, violence prevention. There is a route, though, that's working its way up in Washington now, and that's in some regulatory action in the area of ghost guns. And let me talk a little bit about ghost guns, because that's something that I'm very much involved in. A ghost gun is a gun that is easily assembled from a kit or from parts that are all very easily available on the internet, whereby you can buy what's known as a receiver, you can buy a trigger mechanism, you can buy a body or a handle, you can buy a trigger, and through the use of YouTube video, you can put it together and make a fully functional gun. Well, under most state and federal laws, that falls in a loophole in that it's not a regulated product because it's not a firearm under the definition of most states' firearm laws or federal firearm laws, yet it's a fully functional firearm. So I have a bill here in Massachusetts that is actually gaining some steam, and I'm hopeful that we're actually going to do this session that will take those so-called ghost guns, and also, as an aside, a 3D printed gun, which is a gun manufactured in a 3D printer in your house, and pull them under the regulatory schemes that we have here in Massachusetts, and make sure that if you're going to have one of these weapons, that it is fully functional. I mean that it is fully licensed and it's safe, and you have to go through the licensing process as everything else. In a parallel track, the Biden administration is working on a set of draft regulations in the regulatory phase to pull these under the federal laws. That's having problems because it's getting a lot of pushback from the gun manufacturers who profit from this, obviously, and also a bunch of senators and congressmen who don't like any gun regulations at all. The other thing that is actually quite concerning, though, going on nationally in the gun sphere are a couple of cases currently at the US Supreme Court that are quite concerning, I'm going to have to say. So there are laws on the books in New York State and also in California, and these cases have been joined up at the US Supreme Court, whereby there is a challenge to the statutes in those states and their gun licensing and permitting schemes. And we could lose those cases, quite frankly. And if we lose those cases, depending on the wording that the Supreme Court puts out, Massachusetts statutes could be in danger as well. There are some differences between the New York statute and that's being challenged in the Massachusetts statute. So I'm hoping that if the Supreme Court comes up with an adverse decision on the New York statute, which I'm afraid they are given the current makeup of the Supreme Court, I'm hopeful that the Massachusetts statute will withstand and still be constitutional under the Second Amendment. But I can tell you, if the Supreme Court comes out with a bad decision, this is going to throw out gun laws all over the country. And this is going to be a real problem, I can tell you. We're going to be pushed back much farther back than we've ever been, which is really, really quite concerning. Okay. That's sort of where we are in a national way. What I didn't talk about is what I'll say is the good news, and that is the public opinion polling and the activism, particularly among young people on this issue around the country, is at a really high level right now. Public opinion polls show that the vast majority of Americans are in favor of strong gun violence prevention laws and policies. They really do. They're really good. In addition to that, the level of activism following Parkland among high school and college students was tremendous. So clearly, the future on this issue, I think, is pretty bright. What is standing in the way, quite frankly, is a bunch of old white guys in the US Senate. And this is coming from an old white guy right now, who still believe the dogma that's put out by the NRA and the gun manufacturers, which are basically one and the same at this point. We need a change in the US Senate to be able to get done what we need to get done. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic so long as the Supreme Court of the United States doesn't come up with a bad decision, I will say. We still have 45,000 gun deaths a year. But what that doesn't count, and this number is never really out there, we have several 100,000 gun injuries a year. And quite frankly, that death total would be a lot higher, but for the fact that we have such good emergency medicine around most of the country. People get saved from gunshot wounds, they really do. Just as a sort of a general primer of how I look at this, the types of incidents and shootings that get most of the attention are these horrific mass shootings, obviously. The Parklands, the Sandy Hooks, the Las Vegas, you can go on and on and on, where multiple people are shot and or killed. And they get the attention. But that's not what most gun deaths are in the United States. Most gun deaths and most shootings in the United States are domestic violence, or they're urban gang violence. And those two types of gun violence do not attract the attention. On the same day that the 17 students were killed in Parkland High School, in all probability, I don't have the number in front of me, but probably another 100 people were shot around the country and were killed, and that didn't get any attention. A person's a person. And, so that I've always been a believer in that we need to separate out the different types of gun violence in this country and come up with solutions to attack each and every one of them. You know, you need a strategy, obviously, on mass shootings, and in my humble opinion, that includes a ban on large magazines and semi-automatic weapons, because that's the weapon of choice in those. But for domestic violence and street violence, you need to deal with handguns. For accidental shootings, you need to have better training, and you need to have safety training, and you need to have what we call safe storage laws, which we have in Massachusetts, that basically say that if a gun isn't under your control, it has to be in a locked box, and the ammunition has to be stored separately. That type of law keeps the 4-year-old from shooting his 3-year-old little brother because he found mommy or daddy's gun in the closet. A frequent argument that I hear from gun manufacturers and the NRA is, well, this law wouldn't have stopped Parkland, or this law wouldn't have stopped Sandy Hook. And they're right, because every type of situation is different, and it really requires a selection or a buffet, if you will, of different strategies to be able to reduce gun violence. We're never going to reduce gun violence in this country because, for one reason or another, we have over 300 million guns in circulation. And you can't, guns unfortunately stay around for years and years and years. They don't disintegrate. And so we have to, recognize that unfortunate fact and figure out a way to make living with guns in society safer. That's why I and other people who work in this field, we don't talk about gun control anymore. We talk about gun violence prevention, and we talk about gun safety, because we realize that the genie's out of the bottle in the United States of America, unfortunately. So we just have to figure out a way to make this country and these states safer. In terms of what's happening in Massachusetts, like I said, I've got a bill that's moving on ghost guns and 3D printed guns. I've got another bill that's moving. There's something I've been working on for a long time. It's a very simple bill, and let me tell you what this is. So one of the good parts about Massachusetts and some other states is that before you're issued a gun permit or gun license in Massachusetts, you have to take a gun safety course. Okay, that's a good thing. Unfortunately, it is not part of the required curriculum in the gun safety course that you actually fire a gun. Okay. Most courses will in fact take you to a range and have you do it, but there are instructors out there, and it's perfectly legal under present mass law, that will do a kitchen table course and show you a plastic gun or show you a real gun and say, this is how you operate it, but you never have a chance to actually fire one and learn how to load and fire it safely. I think that's a huge mistake, quite frankly. I think that if you're going to get a gun license, you should know what it's like to actually load and fire a gun safely. The current situation, I always analogize to this. Remember back when you were 16 years old and you took driver training, and you took the classroom part, and then you were required to do so many hours behind the wheel? I think this is a very similar situation. I don't think you would want to give somebody a driver's license who just took the classroom portion of the training and not have the behind the wheel training and gave them the driver's license. I think that would be a huge mistake. So I have a bill that I filed a number of times, and it was actually just reported out favorably from committee last week, that would require a certain number of hours and rounds of ammunition to be fired. I'm hoping we can get that into law. Believe it or not, a lot of states actually do have that. Texas has that in their gun safety curriculum. So I'm hoping we can do that. So again, I'm still out there working. And like I said, today I'm working from my brother's house on Cape Cod. The meds have not kicked in yet. So I'm doing okay this morning. And I look forward to chatting on this or any other issues that you ever want to bring up at any point in time. So I'm going to throw it back to you folks. Okay.
Well, thank you for that overview. It's been fascinating. So I'd like to invite folks to ask questions. One question I've got just to lead off with is the NRA. I think we had heard reported that they had such financial problems that they were starting to weaken as an organization. Has that trend continued, or are they still just as much of an elephant in the room as they always had been? Or
the NRA, they are in big financial trouble. Okay, they are. And they do not appear to be the same political force that they had been for quite a while. But there are other groups out there, and they're funneling money through other groups. And remember, NRA's money and the other groups' money is not through individual memberships. They claim to have, so many millions of members, but that's not where they get it. It's directly from the gun manufacturers that's coming in. Legislators, we can be scaredy cats sometimes. And if you get, a ton of phone calls and emails and letters on a particular subject, we get scared. And their political power, I've always felt, was way too overstated. It was almost mythical. And I think that myth wasn't exactly true.
Martin, I see you've got your hand up. You're on mute. You just need to take yourself off.
Actually, it's Beverly this time.
Oh, great. Hey, Beverly.
She's joining us.
I can for a few minutes. I was just wondering how effective, I think it's wonderful to have ghost gun and 3D printing guns legislation, but I'm wondering how effective it is when those tend to be used in illegal uses anyway.
Well, we got to do something, Bev. It's, the bigger and bigger percentages of the guns that are being recovered in urban areas around the country are now ghost guns. And they're readily acceptable. And quite frankly, we got to stop that. One of the ways that police are able to solve crimes is being able to do tracing on guns, because they all have, serial numbers and markings, and you can't do that with a ghost gun. So part of the ghost gun legislation, in addition to trying to get them off the streets, quite frankly, is to make it a better crime solving tool. So we can do that. And then in terms of the 3D printed guns, those are just dangerous. They explode in people's hands. We've got to figure out a way to stop this. We're trying to do things as, a little bits at a time as we possibly can, because we really do feel like we're pushing the tide back here.
Can I ask one more question? Is I thought at one point the gun manufacturers, some of them at least, were putting in safety features such as having the owner's fingerprint on it, or having it, I thought they were starting to do that, but the NRA pushed back and they stopped. Is there any thought of getting manufacturers required to put in safety features?
Good luck on that one. So what Bev is talking about is there's technology available now called smart guns. How your iPhone, or at least now a generation ago of an iPhone or a model ago, works on your fingerprint. You can do the same type of technology on a gun, so that only the legal owner of that gun can fire that gun. So the manufacturers they've really banded together saying, we're not doing this. And nobody will manufacture them. There was a company that was out there trying to market them, and the other gun manufacturers basically ran them out of the market, ran them out of town. It's a nasty, nasty, nasty business, I gotta tell you.
I see Bill's got his hand up, but there's also a question in the chat from Rick that maybe you can address. Is the purchase of ammunition regulated besides guns?
Yes, in Massachusetts it is. You need what's known as an FID card, firearm identification card, to be able to buy ammunition in Massachusetts.
Okay. And Bill?
David, are you familiar with the laws, the gun laws in Japan?
Slightly. I like sushi, but and I know that better than gun laws. So, but I'll give it a shot.
No, the reason I'm saying it is I saw a short article that described how you can legally get a gun in Japan, and you can, and it involves gun safety and choosing the gun and psychological reviews and so on. And obviously, I would not expect anything like that to happen in this country. But I wondered if you had, or you might want to consider parsing out all of the steps they have, and maybe there's some that we could tweak that you haven't thought of, although that seemed extremely unlikely based on your 40 years of work in this area. So I just throw that out as a thought.
No, I appreciate that. See, Bill, the problem, quite frankly, is it's very hard for us to compare what other countries are doing, what we have here in the United States, because we've got this thing called the Second Amendment. And the way that the courts have interpreted the Second Amendment probably isn't the way that the founders originally intended it, but it's the law of the land, and we have to figure out how to deal with it. So it, you know, any restriction on firearm use and ownership, there'll always be an argument that it's violative of the Second Amendment to the Constitution. And so we always have to be very, very careful of that.
Sarah, you had a question.
Yeah, my question is, quite recently, I saw some headlines about a city in California, and I can't remember which one, that is trying to get, or maybe has
Liability insurance.
liability insurance. Yeah. And I don't know too much about it, but it seemed like an interesting idea.
Right. All right. So let me tell you. So liability insurance is something that I've thrown out there. I filed bills on for years and years and years, because I honestly believe that this is a way to make gun ownership safer. Because you know when the insurance companies in the United States got sick of paying out so much money for deaths and injuries in cars, they got very interested in car safety, and car safety is way more effective now than it was when all of us were learning how to drive. We have things like airbags and seat belts and, you know, side airbags and early warning systems and all that. We can do the same thing in guns, but there needs to be a financial incentive for it. And I believe, quite honestly, that liability insurance can play a role in this, making it required that you carry liability insurance condition of gun ownership. No state has done it. San Jose, California just passed a municipal ordinance. I'm sure this is going to have a court challenge out in California about whether or not a city has the legal authority to do this. But I'm watching that very closely, because I do think that's part of the future of gun violence prevention.
And just a follow-up question, that the piece that I didn't understand about this is, do insurance companies offer this kind of protection?
Yes, well, they do and they don't, okay? Believe it or not, and they may have just stopped this, the NRA, as a benefit of membership in the NRA, actually gave like a small $2,000 insurance policy as a benefit. And then they offered through one of their insurance partners a bigger policy for sale. I think they pulled back on it because they realized that we were using that as a example. So they may have stopped that, but you can get an insurance company to write anything. Okay, you can, if there's a profit available for them. And the answer is they're happy to do this. They're happy to do this.
Interesting.
Who else has got a question? Rick, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm interested in knowing, wait a minute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, okay. What about the issue of gun buybacks as policy? I mean, we
yes.
spend money
Rick,
on a lot of things. Yeah.
All right. Rick, obviously, I absolutely love what you and Jay and a few others have been doing locally on that. I think they're wonderful. Anything we can do to get guns, out of people's houses who don't want them anymore is wonderful. And I think they have a role as part of other strategies. I say that. The problem, of course, with gun buybacks, and you know this because you've been involved in so many of them for years, is you tend to get really old weapons that hadn't been used in years and years. You're not getting handguns, you're not getting semi-automatic weapons, you're getting old rifles and shotguns, which is great because I don't want them sitting around somebody's house. I really don't, and it's great. But it has to be a very small, it has to be a portion of a much bigger strategy, is how I look at it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Carrie, you had your hand up.
Yeah,
Sally, after that.
two questions. There's one of us, Natick, with a population of about 36,000 people, I think has what, 3 or 4 places where you can buy a gun. So it's a ratio of roughly 9 to 12,000 people for every gun shop. Is that, indicative of the rest of the state and country, or is that, kind of seems like for a suburban place is pretty, affluent. It seems like a lot of gun shops.
Yeah, I've never really looked at that. From a zoning perspective, there's no separate zone for gun shops. It's just a commercial property. And Natick is a commercial center. Any way you look at it, we're a retail center. And this is, it's a product. I don't know if it is unusually high. I really haven't looked at it. It just sort of happened. But I can tell you, Natick PD does a pretty good job of keeping an eye on.
Yeah. The other question, David Hogg, after the Parkland shooting, kind of came onto the scenes pretty strongly as an advocate for it. Is he still having an influence? And
I saw him on CNN this morning.
Oh.
He's now a student at Harvard.
Oh.
And I've met with him a number of times. He's a college student. He has a lot of what I'll say of piss and vinegar in him, which is a good thing. I did too at one time in my life. And I can make some jokes right now, but I'm just gonna kid. I'm not gonna say it. But he's a college student who has a life too. And I think he's probably been a little frustrated by the slow pace of action, as many college students are, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But he's still out there.
One follow-up. You said you got started interested in this back at Colby College when you're a student there. Was there some incident that really sort of brought you into this whole thing?
No, it wasn't an incident. So let me say, so Colby College, which, in case you guys aren't familiar, is the greatest college in the world. One of the things that Colby is famous for is they were the first college to do what's known as the January Program of Independent Study, JAMPLIN, where you take one sort of semi-fun intensive course for the month of January, while it's, 30 below zero and there's 6 feet of snow and everybody's drunk. But that was Colby back in the 70s.
I did that
And
in Canada for 3 weeks skiing and living
right,
on the side of the mountain. Yeah.
so
Great.
I was fortunate enough my freshman year to do a mock US Senate, believe it or not. And the topic, we did a couple topics, and one of the topics we did was, at that time, we called it gun control. And I played the role of Senator Birch Bayh, who was chairman of the Judiciary Committee for the month of January. And we did hearings on gun control. And I learned about it then. And I became very much interested in the issue. And then, of course, I also was very much aware of it because, as most of you know, I was a prosecutor in the Middlesex District Attorney's Office for 14 years. And I saw firsthand gun violence throughout Middlesex County. And I stood over dead bodies and saw what guns can do. So that's really where I learned about
On the
this.
grand jury for the Carol Stewart murder investigation. When
You were, Carrie? Yeah.
I was on the grand jury for Carol Stewart murder with Charles Stewart and the whole thing. That was quite eye-opening in terms of controversy, how he was gone, that he killed his wife with and all that. But
Wow. Sally, you've been very patient. I know you have a question.
Well, it's just a kind of an atmospheric question. Dave, are you having much colleague cooperation with Republicans in the state on some of this legislation?
I talk to them all the time, but quite frankly, in Massachusetts, the Republicans don't matter. So, in the House, it's 130 to 30. That's not, we don't really need to bother, quite frankly.
Helpful.
Not hopeful, but helpful.
I have a question, Doug.
Yes. Hi, Deb. How are you?
Hi, David. This is Deborah
Hi, Deb.
Mitchell. Yeah, I'm Black Lives Matter. I'm the founder of the Black Lives Matter here in Natick. And I just wanted to introduce myself and Paul Carew as the liaison for the community. And we was wondering, do you have you been able to come to, would you be interested in coming to our next Natick Black Lives Matter, where we're going to be featuring Deb Marin? We're going to be talking about climate change.
I'd be happy. Yeah, Deb, I'd be happy to. If you could just send me the date and time, and I'll make sure I can try to do it. Okay.
Thank you. And then, and after that, we have one on Black Teachers Matter from a friend of mine who's a teacher at Northeastern and et cetera. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
I'm happy to. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that. Just
I can
send me
find
the
it.
stuff.
Paul, can you help me find his email?
I can get that for you.
Yeah,
Or
Paul sends me an email every day, so that's really good.
yeah.
That's easy.
All right.
Okay. Nice to meet you, David. Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Deb.
Yeah. Martin, did you have a question? I thought
Yeah, I
saw you.
did. I had a question, kind of a different subject, but I hadn't really been following the redistricting because of the census. But am I correct in assuming
Yes.
Natick has one senator now and one?
Yeah. So let me tell you. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Mark. So let me say, this goes back to the Constitution of the United States. Okay. As you know, we have to do a federal census every 10 years. And as a result of that, every elected office has to be redistricted to under one person, one vote to make sure that the legislative districts are all the same. On the House side, the target number is a little over 45,000. For a legislative district. And so my district is changing slightly. I'm still going to represent all of Natick. This is assuming I'm reelected in November, of course, because this goes effect in January. I'm still going to represent all of Natick, but unfortunately, I am losing my good friends to represent in Sherburne and in Millis. I've spent 22 years representing and getting to know the people in those two towns. And unfortunately, the numbers didn't work. So I am going to be picking up 2 precincts in Wayland for the first time. The southern half of Wayland, I get the Villa and I get the Shat and I get Mel's and Donlands Market and basically everything south of Route 126 in Wayland. So that's going to be something new for me. But I'm going to miss my friends in Sherburne and Millis. On the Senate side, Natick is now Senate, Senate does their own thing. Okay. So we're losing Becca Rausch out of Natick. Her district is really changing a lot. And Karen Spilka, the Senate president's going to get all on Natick. Karen and I have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful working relationship. And I'm looking forward to having Karen as my, for Natick, being my sole state senator. I'll miss Becca, obviously, and I'll miss her. She's still going to hold on to Sherburne and Millis, but I won't be working with her there. And she's also losing Wayland, so I'm not gonna be with her there. I'm gonna be with Jamie Eldridge. So that's the reality. Part of this is, in case you didn't know it, Natick gained over 4,000 people in 10 years. And so that created some redistricting issues in itself. So we're now up over 37,000 actually right now.
Can I ask another unrelated question to gun safety, which is privacy? I read in the Globe recently that there was finally some legislation around keeping our information private online, that companies aren't allowed to willy-nilly gather our information without our permission, but that it had been watered down from a prior version. Do you know, the story behind all that? It seems crazy that as a progressive state, we can't follow California and the EU and maintain.
Yeah, this is, Bev, this is a really tough issue about what we can do. And the right way to solve this is federally. It is so hard to regulate internet matters on a state-by-state basis. It makes no sense, a lot of this goes back, quite frankly, to we have a totally dysfunctional Congress right now. It is totally dysfunctional. They cannot accomplish anything. Part of it is the filibuster rule in the Senate. Part of it is that the House and the Senate are the House is so incredibly gerrymandered that there are very few competitive races, so people only play to their base, their primary voters. Either you have a very Republican district or a very Democratic district, and very few competitive districts in the House. It's completely dysfunctional. And as a result, things just don't move. Congress, they're lucky if they can do one thing at a time. They cannot walk and chew gum at the same time. They clearly cannot. And we're not a good country as a result of it. Or we're not a better country as a result of it.
Depressing reality. Cindy, I see you've got your hand up. Just have to come off mute.
Yep.
There you go.
Follow up on the gun buyback question. Is there a difference between doing that in Boston and doing it in Natick in terms of the kinds of guns that come back? I used to live in Boston, and I thought that there was a good return on more current kinds of guns.
There can be, but again, you're dealing with relatively small quantities. You really are. And I love gun buybacks, but you're getting guns mostly that somebody left in their attic after they died, we want to get those out of people's houses. They're dangerous, but it needs to be part of a bigger strategy.
Thanks.
Paulie?
Yeah. I agree, Dave. The gun buybacks are effective against guns out of folks' house after the gun owner passes, and the widow or the children just want to get rid of the guns. That's the biggest, I think, part of the buybacks. It's not gonna get the guns from other folks that would like to turn in guns. Now, I'm one of them old white folk that David had mentioned earlier. Not with the same attitude as some of the old white folk, but I turned in my license to carry over 10 years ago and given my guns over 10 years ago. And that was for my family's safety and my own safety. And I think what I'm seeing now, Dave, the next generation, the next couple of generations of the folks I deal with, which David knows very well from all his activities in Natick, a completely different attitude. We're not having the young folks like the old white folks buying up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 guns in collections. We're not finding that attitude with the younger generation. You're not finding the younger generation that's buying guns just because they feel threatened by their neighbor or even, hate to say this, the government. So the attitudes have changed. I'm seeing now, and that I think is a big reason why you folks that the NRA is not progressing as they used to.
Guys, I'm gonna have to sign off right now. I'm at a point where I'm running out of steam, if that's okay, given my current physical condition.
It's certainly
you,
fine.
Dave.
I was going to thank you for hanging on so long. We
Yeah,
really enjoyed this overview.
Thanks for your work, David.
I'm happy to come back and talk about any other issues that you might have at any time, and keep up the good work, guys. Okay.
All right.
Thank you,
Feel
Dave.
better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy
Yeah.
Valentine's Day.
And I'm going to stop the recording and maybe we'll talk a little informally if we'd like, but I'm going to stop.
Yeah. I think